Melissa got cast before me. And I read that she had been cast, and I was like, I cried because I thought, I'm so happy for her, but I also know that there's no way that a network is going to cast 2 Latinas. It doesn't happen. There's only one of us ever, you know?
This is a personal journey through representation. How I came to be aware and to need something I didn't realize that I needed before I had the conscience of. There's a lot more that could be said in this topic. I could literally write a full essay on just this, but I'd rather you hear my story, not data, my personal story and journey through representation. Let's start from the beginning, or like I like to call it in this context, the prequel. I, the flower that I am, was like many other flowers and boys on this part of the world, born in a foreign country. Mine is Colombia. As I grew up down there for the first 6 years of my life, like the 2000 baby that I am, I got to experience American television since my birth. And maybe some of you will ask, wait, isn't Colombia in Latin America? Shouldn't their shows be Latinos and telenovelas? Well, thank you for asking that question. The thing with Colombia is that we don't necessarily have the budget to have full-on American-like productions, but also because we're so near America, most of our shows and most of our television is also American. This is basically something that the United States does because they know that we are close to them and they know we can be clients of their networks. Although Colombia has a big diversity when it comes to the skin color of its population, explained by our history of colonization and slavery, the beauty standards are greatly influenced by the United States, mainly because of the shows too. The train of thought is basically that American equals rich and respectable because that's what we see on television, so we have to assimilate their culture to reach their status. It's a very implicit colonizer mentality. Okay, but literally, my go-to shows growing up were Hannah Montana, The Wizard of Waverly Place, High School Musical. Our entertainment industry is so Americanized that my first crush was Troy Bolton. I wanted to be Gabriela Montez. Then, when I was 6 years old, I moved to Canada. If the shows I watched were different, the complexion of skin of the actors wasn't. But it was never something I really noticed since I also spent my entire childhood in a predominantly white and privileged environment. So naturally, I just brushed it off. I also grew up watching a lot of romantic comedies, where the main character is usually a white privileged woman. So I thought that love must have been reserved to the skinny, beautiful white girls. And I was brown, so it was none of my business. In my teenage years, I was convinced that the Latina woman is feisty, cold, short-tempered, breaks heart, is a bombshell in a nutshell. And I was not. I mean, I was 13, I was going through like not even the beginning of my puberty, like I was still a kid technically. But I tried to be because that was the role that I saw was given to me according to the representation that I had. I didn't see much of teenagers being Latinos in American shows. Jane the Virgin was released in 2014, and from the moment that I found the series, I was so happy to be able to relate to Jane Villanueva. My personality resembled greatly to hers because I like to write, I'm super sensitive, I'm really like emotional, but I also look similar, even though my body type is not the same as her. I mean, I don't have like a bootylicious, whatever it is, like I don't have a bombshell body. Like I have a normal body, I have a beautiful body, I like my body, but it's not like Sofia Vergara, okay? My body was more like Jane's. I was so happy to see her on screen and be able to have a little piece of who I was portrayed in an American production. I was closer to realizing the lack of me in Hollywood. The main story. It was 2017. I was 16. As common as it is, because I'm basic, I am a Marvel fan. I had watched all the movies with their heroes and at rare occasions their heroines. And then she walked in, or more drunkly wobbled in. Her with her light skin, powerful body, and intriguing personality. And that's when I realized I needed her. I yearned for her. I wanted her. Okay, this sounds very erotic. I mean, it was pretty intense because no princess, no main character in romantic comedies, no superhero looked like me. And I shed a tear. Because even if I merely resembled to Tessa Thompson, I saw myself in her. Physically. And I mean, like, I don't even look like her. The ride home was eye-opening. I realized why I loved Jane, why my favorite characters were Callie or Amy or Rosa, why I had thought when I was 10 that my crush, who happened to be white, would never like me because I was a Latina in a sea of white pretty girls, and that white boys could only go with white girls. Why I had pretended for many years to mirror characters that were straight out of stereotypes. That was the moment that I realized the lack of representation of the Latino community and its diversity in Hollywood. At first, I thought it was probably normal since after all, I do live in an American country. I also thought that I was stupid to ask for more because I shouldn't be and couldn't be so influenced by social media and movies. As time passed, I understood that I'm not the only young, Latina, and woman who feels this way. I started talking about it to a few of my Latinos friends, and we also bonded over shows such as Jane the Virgin or On My Block, even though our life are really not at all similar to what happens in those shows. We talked about how we felt we were not represented and how sometimes we get called white Latina or coconut, brown on the outside but white inside, because a part of us had to remove its roots to plant them in another country, and because of that our personality changed a lot and our interests became more Americanized than ever. But that's a completely different topic. The fact that I live in a continent where a big part of its demographic is Latino, yet its entertainment industry is saturated of American shows, which set the beauty standard in Latin countries. In the USA alone, 23% of the babies born are Latin Americans. It's almost a quarter of their population, yet their representation in Hollywood is minimal, almost non-existent. If from time to time we do get our movies, they don't really explore the wide spectrum and personality of people that our minority has. And it matters because as humans, we love to go through emotions without having to live through the action. And that's why we love stories. That's what stories are for. For centuries, stories have been a form of entertainment, but also tools to develop critical thinking. Fairy tales for kids are often made to have some sort of lesson. Movies and series are stories. Not all of them have lessons, but they exist in the realm of visual art, and art imitates life. We want to be able to connect with the character, but if we cannot even see yourself in the shoes of that character, how are we supposed to feel seen or feel like our lives are worth being told? Representation is very important in the era that we live in. We are practically attached to our smartphones. Actually, most chances are that if you're watching this, it's on your phone. Unfortunately, the future generations are probably going to be born with a level of technology and virtual entertainment beyond their reach of or level of maturity. Hell, I was born in the beginning of that era. It would be false to say that social media and movies don't influence our youth and our development. Films often provide children with a framework from which to understand the world around them. Often the messages are subtle, but they are also pervasive. They learn from media, and their beliefs and value systems are in part shaped by the media. Children have more difficult time deciphering reality from fantasy and also lack the skill necessary to critically evaluate the messages presented to them via the media. But to be honest, adults also struggle to critically evaluate the message as well and are also likely to internalize belief from media sources, including movies. So, if we take this into account, my fear of being so influenced by social media and movies is not made out of nothing. Because it's reality, our brain has something a hard time computing with whatever it is that we're seeing in front is just a fantasy and not the reality. That's why strong and positive representation can help fight and break down stereotypes that can be detrimental to individuals and limited to society. When a group of people is only ever represented in negative ways, it adversely affects the way others sees them, as well as the way they see themselves, which means, on the flip side, positive representation can build self-confidence in individuals. I want to be able to see myself on screen. I needed it growing up. I need little flowers and little boys of my communities and of all minorities to feel seen because our stories matters. Our life is complex and beautiful as those of white people. Our bodies and beliefs should also be celebrated. America knows the power it holds in the world of pop culture and visual arts. It should take into account the fact that the world is diverse. For years, they have played the role of the white savior. Well, for once, I ask you to be that said savior and give place to the minorities. Open the doors for producers, writers, actors, and companies who want to share the Latino, Asian, Black, Indian, Arab, Indigenous, and mixed world. Because if there's one issue is that even us people who are minorities are so used to seeing white people on screen and white stories being told that we have a hard time telling our own stories. So white people, can you please open the door for us if that's what we need for us to be able to write our own stories? I'll just like to end with this. Representation is a vicious cycle. We write about what we see and what we experience. When all we study is white and all we see is white, all we create is white. But white is not all that exists. As I've said it before, one of the core beliefs that is still very prominent in our society is that in order to succeed in life, you have to find love or get in a long-term romance, which is not a bad goal to have, but it's absolutely false that the pinnacle of happiness is found in a romantic relationship.